The sky over New York City turned an eerie shade of orange as the massive alien spacecraft descended from above. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. A colossal metallic structure that seemed to blot out the sun itself. People froze in their tracks, staring upward with a mix of awe and terror. Cars screeched to a halt on busy streets, and the hum of daily life came to an abrupt silence. The ship hovered motionless for several moments, its surface shimmering faintly as if alive. Then, without warning, a deep, resonant voice boomed across the city, and soon the entire planet. "Humans of Earth," the voice began, cold and mechanical yet perfectly clear. "You are now under the control of the Vorthax Empire. Surrender unconditionally, or face total annihilation." The message repeated in multiple languages, but the meaning was unmistakable. Panic erupted almost instantly. Crowds scattered in every direction, some fleeing to their homes while others tried to call loved ones. Phones buzzed incessantly as people attempted to reach family and friends, only to find networks crashing under the weight of overwhelming traffic. In Ohio, far from the chaos engulfing New York, Jake Thompson sat on his couch next to his wife, Emily Carter. Their small television flickered with live footage of the alien craft looming over Manhattan. "What do you think it means?" Emily asked, her voice trembling slightly. She clutched a cup of tea tightly, though she hadn't taken a single sip since turning on the news. Jake shrugged, leaning forward to rest his elbows on his knees. His hands were calloused from years of working as a mechanic, fixing cars and machines most people didn't understand. "I don't know," he admitted, "but it doesn't sound good." Outside their modest home, the neighborhood was eerily quiet. Normally, kids would be playing in the street, and neighbors might wave hello as they passed by. But today, everyone stayed indoors, glued to their screens or peeking nervously through curtains. Even the birds seemed to have gone silent. As the hours dragged on, more details emerged about the aliens calling themselves the Vorthax. They were tall, insect-like creatures with armored exoskeletons and glowing eyes. Footage showed them patrolling the streets of major cities alongside towering robotic sentinels. Governments around the world scrambled to respond, issuing statements urging calm while secretly preparing for war. But no one knew what these invaders truly wanted, or how humanity could possibly fight back. Jake felt uneasy. He wasn't sure why, but something about the situation gnawed at him. Maybe it was the way the Vorthax spoke, so certain, so superior, as if humans were nothing more than pests to be dealt with. Or maybe it was the strange dreams he'd been having lately, vivid flashes of battles fought among stars he didn't recognize. Whatever it was, he couldn't shake the feeling that this moment wasn't random, that somehow it was connected to him. Emily noticed his distant expression and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Hey," she said softly, "we'll figure this out. We always do." Jake nodded, forcing a weak smile. "Yeah," he replied, "but I've got a bad feeling about this one." Little did he know, his instincts were right. This invasion wasn't just another crisis for humanity to overcome. It was the beginning of something much bigger, something that would force Jake, Emily, and countless others to rise above everything they thought they knew about themselves. And when the dust finally settled, the Vorthax would learn a lesson they'd never forget. Messing with humans comes at a cost. Days turned into a week, and the reality of the Vorthax occupation began to sink in. The alien overlords wasted no time establishing control. Their robotic sentinels patrolled towns and cities, enforcing curfews with brutal efficiency. Anyone caught outside after dark faced immediate punishment, detention, injury, or worse. Communication networks were completely shut down, leaving people isolated and afraid. Governments tried to resist, but their efforts were crushed almost instantly by the superior technology of the invaders. In small towns like Maplewood, Ohio, where Jake and Emily lived, life became a grim routine. People stayed indoors, whispering about what might happen next. Some gave in to despair, convinced there was no way to fight back. Others, however, refused to accept defeat. Among them was Sarah Bennett, a former Army medic who had moved to Maplewood after leaving the military. She had always been tough, but now she was driven by something deeper, a fierce determination to protect her community. Sarah started organizing secret meetings in an abandoned barn on the outskirts of town. At first, only a handful of people showed up: neighbors, friends, and a few strangers passing through. But as word spread, more joined. They called themselves the Resistance, though they didn't yet know how much resistance they could actually offer. Most of them were ordinary folks, teachers, farmers, shopkeepers, who had never held a weapon before. Still, they were united by one goal: to take back their freedom. One evening, Sarah approached Jake and Emily at the meeting. "We need your help," she said bluntly, looking straight at Jake. He blinked in surprise. "Me? What can I do?" "You're a mechanic, right?" Sarah asked. When Jake nodded, she continued, "We've managed to salvage some parts from those robots the Vorthax use. If we can figure out how they work, maybe we can disable them, or even turn them against the aliens." Jake hesitated. He wasn't sure he was cut out for this kind of thing. Fixing cars was one thing. Messing with alien tech felt like stepping into unknown territory. But Emily squeezed his hand encouragingly. "You're the best person for this," she told him firmly. Reluctantly, Jake agreed. Over the next few days, Jake worked tirelessly in the barn, surrounded by scraps of metal and wires that seemed to hum faintly with energy. Chris Dawson, a quiet teenager with a knack for electronics, often helped him. Together, they pieced together fragments of circuits and studied strange symbols etched into the components. It was slow, frustrating work, but Jake found himself growing more confident with each passing day. Meanwhile, Emily began noticing changes in Jake. He seemed sharper, more focused, not just in his work, but in how he carried himself. There was a new intensity in his eyes, as if he were remembering something long forgotten. One night, after everyone else had gone home, Jake stayed behind to tinker alone. Emily found him staring at a glowing fragment of alien machinery, his hands trembling slightly. "Are you okay?" she asked, concern in her voice. Jake looked up, startled. I think so," he replied slowly. "It's just, these pieces, they feel familiar somehow, like I've seen them before." Emily frowned. "How is that possible? You've never dealt with anything like this." "I don't know," Jake admitted, "but I keep having these dreams. Visions, almost. Battles in space, humans fighting aliens. It's like my mind is trying to tell me something." Emily didn't know what to say. She wanted to reassure him, but deep down, she couldn't ignore the possibility that there might be truth in his words. After all, the Vorthax invasion had already proven that the universe was far stranger than anyone imagined. As Jake returned to his work, Emily stepped outside, gazing up at the stars. For the first time, they seemed less distant, less mysterious. Whatever secrets lay hidden among them, one thing was clear: humanity wasn't going down without a fight. And Jake, whether he realized it or not, might hold the key to unlocking a power greater than anyone could have imagined. Jake spent countless hours in the barn, piecing together fragments of alien technology. The glowing circuits and strange symbols fascinated him, but they also unsettled him. Every time he touched the alien parts, a faint buzzing sensation ran through his fingertips, as if the machinery were alive. It was during one late-night session that he made a discovery that would change everything. He had been examining a small disc-shaped component when something caught his eye. Embedded deep within the metal was a tiny strand, almost invisible, that looked suspiciously like human DNA. At first, Jake thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, so he called Chris Dawson over to take a closer look. The teenager adjusted his glasses and peered closely at the fragment. "That's weird," Chris muttered. "It's definitely biological. But why would alien tech have human DNA in it?" Jake didn't have an answer, but the discovery gnawed at him. He brought the piece to Sarah Bennett the next morning. She studied it carefully, her brow furrowed in thought. "This could mean something big," she said finally. "Maybe the Vorthax have been experimenting on humans for years or centuries. Maybe this isn't their first visit." The idea sent shivers down everyone's spines. If the aliens had been watching humanity for that long, what else did they know? And why had they chosen now to invade? Sarah decided to share the finding with the rest of the resistance. When she explained it during their next meeting, the room fell silent. People exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to make of the news. But Jake wasn't done yet. That night, he began having another vivid dream. This time, he saw himself standing on a battlefield unlike any he'd ever known. The ground was scorched black, and the sky burned red. Around him, warriors fought fiercely against towering insect-like creatures that resemble the Vorthax. What shocked Jake the most was that these warriors were human, but not quite like modern humans. They wore armor made of shimmering metal and wielded weapons that pulsed with energy. As Jake watched, one of the warriors turned to face him. His heart raced when he realized the man looked exactly like him. When Jake woke up, he was drenched in sweat. Emily sat beside him, wide awake. "You were talking in your sleep again," she said softly. "Something about a battle." Jake hesitated before telling her about the dream. He described the warriors, the weapons, and the eerie resemblance between himself and the soldier who had stared at him. Emily listened quietly, her expression unreadable. "Do you think maybe you're remembering something real?" she asked cautiously. "I don't know," Jake admitted, "but it feels real, like it's part of me somehow." Word of Jake's dreams spread quickly among the resistance. Some dismissed them as stress or exhaustion, but others, including Sarah, took them seriously. "If the Vorthax have been studying us," Sarah reasoned, "then maybe our ancestors fought them before. Maybe Jake's connection to this tech isn't random. Maybe it's genetic." Determined to find answers, Jake dove deeper into his work. With Chris's help, he managed to extract more information from the alien components. They discovered encrypted data logs written in a language no one recognized. Desperate for help, they reached out to Laura Hayes, a former journalist who had joined the resistance after losing her family in the initial invasion. Laura had a sharp mind and a talent for deciphering patterns, and she threw herself into translating the logs. Days passed, and slowly, pieces of the puzzle came together. The logs revealed that the Vorthax weren't just invaders. They were afraid of humanity. Centuries ago, humans had developed primitive technology capable of rivaling even advanced civilizations. The Vorthax saw this potential as a threat and vowed to destroy humanity before it could evolve further. But there was more. The logs hinted at ancient alliances between humans and other alien species, suggesting that humanity's history was far richer and more dangerous than anyone realized. As Jake absorbed this new information, he felt a growing sense of purpose. Whatever role he was meant to play, it was clear that the Vorthax invasion wasn't just about conquering Earth. It was about erasing humanity's legacy and preventing its future. And Jake knew, deep down, that he couldn't let that happen. The resistance knew they couldn't keep hiding forever. With each passing day, the Vorthax tightened their grip on Earth, and the robotic sentinels grew more aggressive. Sarah Bennett called an emergency meeting in the barn to lay out a bold plan. "We can't just sit here waiting for them to find us," she said, her voice firm. "We need to hit them where it hurts, their command centers. If we can get inside one of those, we might be able to disrupt their operations." The group listened intently, but Jake felt his stomach churn. He wasn't a soldier or a spy. He was just a mechanic. Still, Sarah's eyes locked onto him as she spoke. "Jake's connection to their tech gives us an edge," she continued. "If anyone can disable their systems from the inside, it's him." Chris Dawson nodded eagerly. "And I've been working on something that might help," he added, holding up a small device he built using alien parts. "It's a jammer. It won't last long, but it should give us enough time to sneak past their defenses." Laura Hayes chimed in next. "I've been studying maps of Chicago. There's a command center under the city. It's heavily guarded, but if we move fast and stay quiet, we might be able to slip in unnoticed. The plan was risky, dangerous even, but the group agreed it was their best shot. Over the next few days, they prepared carefully. Jake practiced handling the alien tech, trying to ignore the strange buzzing sensation that now seemed stronger than ever. Emily helped by packing supplies and making sure everyone had what they needed. Though she didn't say it aloud, she was terrified for Jake. She knew how much danger he'd be in, but she also knew he wouldn't back down. On the night of the mission, the team gathered at the edge of town. They wore dark clothes and carried makeshift weapons fashioned from whatever they could scavenge. Jake carried the jammer Chris had built, along with a bag of tools in case they needed to improvise. Sarah led the way, her movements steady and deliberate. Laura followed close behind, clutching a map marked with their route. Chris stayed near Jake, ready to assist if anything went wrong. The journey to Chicago was tense. The roads were deserted, littered with abandoned cars and debris. Occasionally, the distant hum of a Sentinel's engines forced them to duck into shadows or hide behind rubble. Once, they narrowly avoided detection when a patrol swept past their hiding spot. Jake held his breath, heart pounding, until the sound faded away. When they finally reached the outskirts of the city, the sight was grim. Buildings stood in ruins, their windows shattered, and walls scorched. The streets were eerily silent except for the occasional metallic clanking of sentinels marching in formation. Following Laura's directions, the group moved cautiously toward the location of the underground command center. The entrance was hidden beneath a collapsed parking garage. Sarah signaled for everyone to stop while she scouted ahead. Moments later, she returned with a grim nod. 2 guards, she whispered, but no sentinels nearby. Jake stepped forward, clutching the jammer. "Let me go first," he said quietly. "If I can get close enough, I can disable the door controls." Sarah hesitated but eventually agreed. Taking a deep breath, Jake crept toward the entrance, his hands trembling slightly. As he approached, he activated the jammer. For a brief moment, the air crackled with energy, and the lights on the guard's armor flickered. Seizing the opportunity, Sarah and the others rushed in, taking the guards by surprise. Inside, the command center was a maze of corridors lit by cold blue light. Alien symbols glowed faintly on the walls, and the hum of machinery filled the air. Jake felt a strange pull, as if the technology itself were calling to him. Shaking off the feeling, he focused on the task at hand. This was their chance, and they couldn't afford to fail. Inside the command center, the air was thick with tension. The group moved quickly but carefully, sticking to the shadows as they navigated the labyrinth of glowing corridors. Jake led the way, his eyes scanning the alien symbols on the walls. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of what they were doing pressed down on him. He couldn't shake the feeling that the technology around them was watching, waiting. They reached a large chamber filled with humming machines and flickering screens. In the center stood a massive console, its surface covered in pulsating lights and intricate patterns. Jake approached it cautiously, his hands trembling slightly. "This is it," he whispered. "The main control hub." Chris stepped forward, clutching his tablet. "If we can upload the virus here, it should spread through their entire network," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But we'll need time to bypass their security protocols." Sarah nodded and turned to Laura. "Keep watch at the entrance. If anyone, or anything, comes near, warn us immediately." Laura hurried off without hesitation, leaving Sarah, Jake, and Chris alone in the chamber. Jake placed his hands on the console, closing his eyes for a moment. The buzzing sensation returned, stronger this time, coursing through his fingers and into his arms. It was as if the machine recognized him, or maybe it was the other way around. Images flashed in his mind. Battles, stars, faces he didn't recognize but somehow knew. He opened his eyes abruptly, shaking his head to clear it. "Jake?" Sarah asked, her tone sharp with concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," he muttered, though his voice betrayed his unease. Focusing on the task, he began working alongside Chris to interface with the alien system. The console responded to his touch, glowing brighter as he manipulated its controls. Data streamed across the screens, written in the same alien language Laura had been deciphering. Slowly, painfully, they pieced together how to upload the virus. As Chris worked on the code, Jake noticed something strange, a hidden file buried deep within the system. Curiosity got the better of him, and he accessed it. What he found left him speechless. The file contained records of humanity's interactions with the Vorthax, stretching back thousands of years. There were images of ancient humans wielding advanced technology, fighting alongside other alien species against the Vorthax. And then there were logs detailing experiments. The Vorthax had been harvesting human DNA, trying to understand why humans were so resilient, so adaptable. "They've been studying us for centuries," Jake said hoarsely, turning to Sarah, "trying to figure out how we keep coming back stronger every time they try to wipe us out." Sarah's jaw tightened. "That explains why they're so afraid of us," she replied. "But it doesn't change what we have to do now." Just then, Laura's voice crackled over their makeshift comms. "Guards incoming. You need to hurry." Panic surged through the group, but Jake forced himself to focus. "Almost done," Chris shouted, his fingers flying over the keyboard. A progress bar appeared on one of the screens, slowly filling up. Seconds felt like hours as they waited for the upload to complete. Suddenly, the doors burst open, and two Vorthax soldiers stormed in, their weapons raised. Sarah reacted instantly, firing a makeshift EMP device at them. The aliens staggered, their armor sparking, giving the group precious seconds. "Go! Go!" Sarah yelled, covering their retreat. With the virus finally uploaded, Jake grabbed the console one last time, ensuring the program would execute properly. Then, with no time to spare, the three of them sprinted toward the exit, dodging blasts from the recovering Vorthax guards. As they rejoined Laura in the corridor, the ground shook violently, and alarms blared throughout the facility. "It's working," Chris exclaimed, grinning despite the chaos. "The virus is spreading." But their celebration was short-lived. Behind them, a command center began to collapse, its systems overloaded by the virus. They ran as fast as they could, hearts pounding, until they emerged into the cold night air. Gasping for breath, they watched as parts of the underground structure crumbled, sending plumes of smoke into the sky. For the first time in days, Jake allowed himself a small smile. They had struck a blow against the Vorthax, and proven that humanity wasn't as powerless as the invaders believed. The success of the mission gave the resistance hope, but it came at a cost. Jake collapsed soon after they returned to the barn, his body unable to handle the strain of interfacing with the alien tech for so long. Emily rushed to his side, her face pale with worry as she held his hand. "Jake, wake up," she pleaded, her voice trembling. For a moment, no one was sure if he would. But Jake wasn't gone. Hours later, he opened his eyes, weak and disoriented but alive. The group gathered around him, relief washing over their faces. Sarah knelt beside him, her expression serious. "You did it, Jake," she said firmly. "The virus is spreading through their network. Those sentinels won't be operational for days, if ever again." Jake managed a faint smile, but didn't respond. His mind was still foggy, filled with flashes of the alien systems and the strange visions he'd seen while connected to them. He knew now that humanity's fight against the Vorthax wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming something ancient and powerful, something buried deep within their history. Word of the team's success spread quickly among the scattered resistance groups. Inspired by their bravery, other cells began launching attacks on Vorthax outposts across the country. Small victories piled up, each one chipping away at the invaders' control. People who had once been paralyzed by fear now rose up, determined to take back their world. Emily watched as Jake slowly regained his strength, though he seemed different somehow. There was a quiet confidence in him now, a sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. One evening, as they sat together outside the barn, she finally asked what was on her mind. "Jake, what happened down there? You've changed." He hesitated, staring at the stars. "I saw things. Things I can't explain. Memories, maybe, or echoes of the past. Humans have faced the Vorthax before, thousands of years ago. We fought alongside other species, used technology we don't even dream of today. And somehow, I think I'm connected to all of it." Emily didn't fully understand, but she nodded. She trusted him, and she could see the fire in his eyes. Whatever this connection was, it was driving him forward and inspiring others. As the resistance grew stronger, Jake became a symbol of hope. Stories of his ability to interface with alien tech spread, drawing people from all over to join the cause. Even those who had doubted humanity's chances began to believe they could win. Sarah took advantage of this momentum, organizing larger-scale operations to strike at key Vorthax targets. With Jake's guidance, they developed new tactics using modified weapons and scavenged alien parts. One night, during a planning session, Laura approached Jake with new information. "We intercepted a transmission from the mothership," she explained. "They're scared, Jake. They know we're hitting them where it hurts. If we can take out the mothership, we might be able to end this for good." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Attacking the mothership would be nearly impossible, not only because of its defenses, but also because it required someone capable of navigating its systems, someone like him. He glanced at Emily, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. She knew what he was thinking, and though she was terrified, she didn't try to stop him. The next day, Sarah called a meeting to outline the plan. "We'll need everything we got for this," she said, her voice steady but intense. "Every fighter, every weapon, every ounce of courage. This is our chance to finish this." Jake stood up, his legs steady despite the weight of what lay ahead. "I'll lead the assault on the mothership," he announced. Murmurs rippled through the group, but no one argued. They all knew he was the only one who could do it. As preparations began, Jake spent hours training and testing his connection to the alien tech. Each time he touched it, the buzzing sensation grew stronger, almost unbearable. But he pushed through. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for everyone. On the eve of the final mission, Emily found him alone in the barn, staring at a glowing fragment of alien machinery. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. "No," he admitted, "but I will be. This is what happens when you mess with humans. We don't give up. Not ever." The day of the final assault arrived, and the air was thick with tension. The resistance had gathered every available fighter, weapon, and resource for the mission. Trucks loaded with explosives and modified alien tech lined the makeshift base outside Maplewood. Jake stood at the center of it all, his face calm but resolute. Around him, people moved with purpose, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. Sarah gave a final briefing before they set out. "This is it," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of what they were about to do. "Once we reach the mothership, there's no turning back. Stick to the plan, watch each other's backs, and remember why we're doing this. For our families, our homes, and our future." Jake nodded, gripping the bag of tools and alien devices he'd prepared. Emily approached him as the group began loading into vehicles. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the strap of his backpack. "You come back to me," she said firmly, though her voice cracked. "Promise me that." "I promise," Jake replied, pulling her into a tight hug. He held her for a moment longer than usual, savoring the warmth of her presence. Then, with a deep breath, he climbed into one of the trucks alongside Chris, Laura, and Sarah. The convoy moved under the cover of darkness, skirting around Vorthax patrols as they made their way toward the massive mothership hovering above New York City. Its shadow loomed over the horizon like a second moon, casting an eerie glow across the landscape. When they reached the designated drop-off point, The group switched to smaller, quieter vehicles to avoid detection. Reaching the launch site, a hidden valley where stolen alien shuttles had been repurposed, they prepared for the ascent. Jake took his position in the lead shuttle, his mind racing with thoughts of what awaited them. As the engines roared to life and the craft lifted off, he glanced out the window at Earth shrinking below them. For the first time, he felt truly aware of how fragile and resilient the planet was. The journey to the mothership was harrowing. Sentinels patrolled the skies, forcing the team to weave through narrow gaps between debris fields left over from earlier battles. Once they reached the ship's docking bay, Sarah signaled for everyone to move quickly. Armed with EMP devices and weapons crafted from alien parts, the group stormed inside, taking down guards stationed near the entrance. Inside the mothership, the corridors were vast and dimly lit, filled with the hum of machinery and strange, glowing symbols etched into the walls. Jake led the way, his connection to the alien tech guiding him deeper into the labyrinth. His hands tingled as he touched control panels, disabling locks and rerouting power to create diversions for the others. As they neared the central chamber, resistance grew fiercer. Vorthax soldiers swarmed the halls, forcing the team to split up to cover more ground. Jake pressed on, knowing he was the only one who could complete the final step. Reaching the core room, he found himself face to face with the Vorthax leader, a towering insectoid figure whose glowing eyes locked onto him with unmistakable hatred. "You cannot win," the creature hissed, its voice reverberating through the chamber. "Your kind is weak, chaotic. We will always prevail." Jake stepped forward, his heart pounding but his resolve unshaken. "You messed with the wrong species," he said, raising the device powered by both human ingenuity and alien technology. With a flick of a switch, the entire system began to overload. Lights flashed, alarms blared, and the ground shook violently as the mothership started to collapse. Turning away from the enraged leader, Jake sprinted toward the escape route, dodging falling debris and bursts of energy. Behind him, explosions erupted, sealing the fate of the invaders. When he finally emerged from the wreckage, floating safely in one of the stolen shuttles, he looked back at the burning hulk of the mothership. It was over. Below, Earth waited, scared but alive. Humanity had won. The aftermath of the battle was surreal. As Jake and the others returned to Earth, they were greeted by scenes of both devastation and triumph. The once oppressive Vorthax sentinels lay motionless in the streets, their systems permanently disabled by the virus and the destruction of the mothership. People emerged cautiously from their homes, blinking in the sunlight as if seeing the world for the first time. Cheers erupted in cities and towns as news spread that humanity had won. Jake stepped out of the shuttle, his legs stiff from the journey, but his spirit lighter than it had been in weeks. Emily ran to him, throwing her arms around him so tightly he could barely breathe. "You did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You saved us." "I didn't do it alone," Jake replied, glancing at Sarah, Chris, Laura, and the rest of the team. They stood nearby, battered and exhausted but grinning from ear to ear. Each of them had played a part in this victory, and Jake knew none of it would have been possible without their courage and determination. In the days that followed, the Resistance worked tirelessly to help rebuild what the Vorthax had destroyed. Power grids came back online, communication networks were restored, and families reunited after months of separation. But even as life began to return to normal, the scars of the invasion remained, both on the land and in the hearts of those who had lived through it. Jake spent hours helping salvage alien tech, teaching others how to use it responsibly. He still felt a strange connection to the machinery, though the buzzing sensation had faded. It was as if the bond he'd formed with the technology during the war had served its purpose and now rested quietly within him. Sometimes, late at night, he would stare at the stars and wonder about the ancestors who had fought alongside other species against the Vorthax. Had they felt the same sense of duty, the same drive to protect humanity? One evening, Sarah called a meeting of the core team in the barn where it all began. The space was quieter now, no longer filled with the frantic energy of wartime planning. "We did something incredible," she said, looking at each of them in turn. "But we can't forget why this happened. The Vorthax saw us as a threat because of our potential. We need to make sure we live up to that, not just for ourselves, but for future generations." Everyone nodded in agreement. Jake spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "This isn't the end. It's a new beginning. We've proven that we're capable of more than anyone thought possible. Now it's up to us to keep moving forward, to build something better." As the group dispersed, Jake stayed behind with Emily, sitting side by side on the steps of the barn. The sky above them was clear, dotted with countless stars. For the first time in a long while, Jake felt at peace. He reached for Emily's hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "We're stronger than they realized," he said softly. "Humans aren't perfect. We argue. We make mistakes. But when it matters, we come together. That's what makes us special." Emily smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "And that's why they'll never break us," she added. Far above, the remnants of the Vorthax fleet flood into the depths of space, vowing never to return. Humanity had sent a message loud and clear. Messing with humans comes at a cost. From the ashes of destruction, a new era dawned, one defined not by fear, but by hope, resilience, and the unshakable belief that no challenge is too great when faced together. Jake looked up at the stars one last time before heading inside. Whatever the future held, he knew humanity was ready.